Hello, everyone. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and I want to wish you all a very happy new year. Today is Tuesday, January 3rd, and you are now watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Governor Kathy Hochul signed legislation banning the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits at retail pet shops. This comes as a solution to end the puppy mill pipeline and to stop abusive pet breeders. Animal rights advocates are now calling on New York City leaders to ban the sale of guinea pigs in pet stores. Joining me to discuss is President of Voters for Animal Rights, Allie Taylor. Allie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Now, for those who are unaware, can you brief us on what puppy mills are and talk a little bit about the fight to get these sites closed down?
A puppy mill is a mass breeding facility where mother dogs are bred over and over and over until they're no longer deemed useful and then they are killed. Puppies that are bred in puppy mills are living in awful conditions. They do not get any kind of appropriate health care, and then they are trucked across state for hours at a time to pet stores where they're sold to unsuspecting customers who are looking to bring a new family member into their home. People are often tricked and manipulated into buying these pets, thinking that they're happy and that they're healthy, but not knowing that they actually may be injured or have diseases that are fatal, and that both they and the parent dogs were raised in absolutely horrendous conditions.
Now, we talked about this the last time that you were on the show, and you were very passionate about it. I learned so much about that. How does it feel to just have this victory?
This feels terrific. New York is now the sixth straight, excuse me, this feels terrific. New York is now the sixth state in the country to ban the sale of dogs and cats and rabbits in pet stores. And we hope that more states will soon take the lead and make cruel breeding facilities a dark relic of the past. We are grateful to Governor Hochul for her leadership on this issue, and we're really excited to see what we can get done in 2023.
Now, what are some rules or guidelines these pet shops must now follow?
There's not much that they need to follow at the moment, which is why these pet stores need to stop selling dogs, cats, and rabbits, period. There are some rules that are set forth by the USDA and by state laws, but they're barely followed. There's little to no enforcement at all. And we certainly cannot trust these for-profit entities to follow any rules, which is why it's absolutely a terrific victory for the animals. They're no longer going to be able to sell them. What this law does is it says that by the end of 2024, all pet stores across New York State will no longer be able to sell dogs, cats, and rabbits, period. They will, however, be able to rent out space within their facilities to allow local rescues and shelters to have some animals on display for ad hoc events.
Now, your organization is also advocating for the removal of guinea pigs, known as Intro 4, in pet shops. Can you expand on this?
Sure. So during the pandemic, many people who are working from home for the first time, who were unable to socialize and had a lot more time on their hands, decided that they wanted to bring an animal into their life, which is very noble and something that we always encourage adoption. However, a lot of folks didn't know any better, and so they started going to pet stores and buying guinea pigs, and they started buying quite a lot of them. Guinea pigs are not like cats and dogs. They're not as affectionate. They're not going to snuggle up with you in bed every night. And what we found is that by the middle of the pandemic, there was a massive uptick in the number of guinea pigs that were not only being surrendered to New York City Animal Care Centers, which is the city's animal shelter system, but we also started getting lots of stories about people abandoning guinea pigs in city parks. These are not wild animals. They are domesticated animals. They cannot survive on their own. So when you dump a guinea pig or any domestic animal in a park, you're setting them up, unfortunately, to die. They will starve to death or they'll be eaten by predators. But the main crux of the problem is that Animal Care Centers of New York City is an organization that already is taking in 20 to 30,000 animals of every species per year. They are underfunded. Their staff is constantly working overtime. And by having this explosion of guinea pigs, it's putting a huge burden and a huge strain on an already overburdened animal shelter system. So what this legislation would do is it would prohibit New York City pet stores from selling guinea pigs at all. And rest assured, if you'd still like to have a guinea pig, you can do that, but you would need to go to a shelter or a rescue to adopt.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because also the same with like, the dogs and the cats. If people, prior they probably would go to a pet store. Can you just let everybody know if they would love to have, an extra family member, what they can do?
The best thing to do is to go to nycacc.org and you can check out all of the thousands of animals that are currently up and available for adoption. And then I would recommend making an appointment to go in person. They have facilities in Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Manhattan. You can meet with adoption counselors and you can meet with the animals and decide who you'd like to bring home.
Now, you recently had a council hearing on December 14th at City Hall. Can you tell us about that?
Legislation Intro 4 was heard in the New York City Committee on Health, which is led by Chairwoman Lynn Shulman. And also present was Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, who's also the prime sponsor of the bill. And we heard from dozens of advocates who are in support of the legislation. We actually only had one person show up who was in opposition, and no shock, they were from the pet store industry. But we heard perspectives from rescuers, from animal shelters, from animal rights activists, and from veterinarians and other public policy experts about why this bill should pass swiftly. And we're very grateful to Speaker Adrian Adams for allowing this hearing to move forward. We're also very grateful to Deputy Speaker Ayala and to Chairperson Lynn Shulman, who has notified us that she will be moving forward with advancing the bill.
Now, how does it feel to have so many people be supportive of this? Because I think that, although people think they're doing right by animals, a lot of people aren't educated on, the proper ways, or, people probably think pet stores are, a safe place for animals. So to see so many people, come out and support this, how does that feel?
It feels like we're making progress. I remember when we first started working on animal legislation in the city council 10 years ago, it was controversial whether or not to require pet stores to have fire sprinklers in their facilities. Today, that would be an absolute no-brainer. So to see the city council and the state legislature starting to make this big progress in passing really substantial laws for animals, I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up in 2023.
Now, recently on September 28th, roughly 20 guinea pigs were abandoned in the lobby of a Staten Island building and were rescued by New York City animal care centers, who are now overloaded with abandoned guinea pigs. You briefly talked about it, but could you just talk about it a little bit more about, why we saw something like that?
We never know exactly why somebody would abandon a pet, and we try not to judge. We try to just work on solutions. Sometimes it can be that they don't have access to stable and safe housing. And so while they're trying to protect the human members of their household, I think sometimes folks get desperate and they panic and they don't know that the safest thing to do would be to bring their animals to an animal shelter. Sometimes people lose their jobs and they're unable to continue to pay for vet care or for food. I think it's important to let folks know that there absolutely are resources out there. ACC has a pet food bank. There's other organizations out there who can provide grants for veterinary care. But really, I do think that the city council and the state legislature does need to start taking a look at really ramping up and providing even more resources to make sure that pet parents have all the support they need.
Now, people often release these animals when they feel overwhelmed or they underestimate how much care they actually need. Is this a common issue in places like New York City or even across the country?
This, unfortunately, is a common problem in New York City and across the country. And while we have seen numerous programs that have popped up in New York City and New York State and across the country to prevent surrender of dogs and cats, I think that what happens is when folks buy animals from pet stores, those pet stores are not exactly screening people. Their goal is to just move what they consider merchandise, the animals themselves, out of their stores as quickly as possible. So they're not educating people on on the proper care and the amount of time and resources that it takes to care for these animals. They're not exactly asking them the right questions to make sure that it's the type of animal that should be in their home. And so the animals end up paying the ultimate price when people bring them home and realize that they may not be exactly what they thought they were getting into.
Now, what kind of care do guinea pigs or, smaller rodents that are similar, what kind of care do they require?
So I'm not a veterinarian, so I can't speak to exactly the type of care that different types of small animals require. But what I do know is that guinea pigs, you cannot just leave them in a cage to sit all day. They do require daily attention from human beings. They require a special type of food, and they do require very expensive vet care when they get sick or when they need to be spayed or neutered.
And I'm really glad that you mentioned that because I know previously from myself, I looked up stuff about rabbits and I learned that, a lot of people similar to guinea pigs just think that they belong in cages and, they really need a lot of space to jump and move around. So, what would you do to encourage somebody who may be interested but aren't sure where to start? What would you do to encourage them just to get educated about these smaller animals?
I would encourage them to go on the internet and to look at the websites of the many rabbit and small animal rescues that exist in New York City and New York State. They all have terrific information about how to prepare your home for having a rabbit and what type of time and financial commitment it takes. These are also organizations that they will not even allow folks to adopt a rabbit or guinea pig or another small animal until they feel confident that the homes that they're going to will be able to provide the right kind of care.
All right, Allie, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
To stay connected with Voters for Animal Rights, please go to their website at www.vafr.org or follow them on Instagram at Voters for Animal Rights and Twitter at The Animal Lovers. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Open right after this.